Hey, sorry for the interruption, but we wanted to let you know that this week's episode is brought to you by Spotify for Podcasters. Really cool app. Josiah and I use it for every single show that we bring to you every week. You can edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so you can start creating as soon as you log into the platform. You can easily distribute your podcasts to Spotify and everywhere else the podcasts are heard, just like we do every single week. You can also create video podcasts on Spotify, which is really cool. And of course, you can earn money like I'm doing right now by including ads and even podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free. There's no catch. We really love it. We use it every single week. So we encourage you to go download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. All right, let's get back to the show.
Radical! Welcome to this week's episode of the Print on Demand Cast. Each week, join the gnarly Travis and Josiah as they provide insight into the print on demand industry and equip you with the totally tubular tools, advice, and strategies you need to achieve success and hopefully have a few laughs along the way. Now on to this week's Totally Tubular show.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Print on Demand Cast, episode 97. That's 3 away from 100 if you're a mathematician. And if you're not, I just helped you. So 3 episodes away from the 100th episode. As always,
Wow.
For all 97 episodes, my co-host, co-pilot, co-captain, Travis Ross joins me. Travis, how's it going, man?
It's going pretty good. We're recording on Monday, which we haven't done for a while. So
Very true.
I could not get out of my email until after lunchtime. I was still going through emails after lunch. So this has been a busy day, but we've sent out a ton of quotes and a lot of people are buying stuff.
Everyone wants the things.
They do. And I can't say I'm complaining about it.
Yeah. You can't say that's a good problem to have. I guess you can't say it's a good problem to have. You can't complain about it. So, I mean, you know what I mean? So it's always good when that happens. So
For sure.
It's a crazy weekend, which we'll get into more of that here shortly as to why this weekend was so eventful and crazy. But before that, we are going to just go straight into this week's
Time for the weekly dad joke.
Okay.
So, Travis, I mean, for those listening, they know that you and I are. They should know you and I are music fans, right? Like we play music, we enjoy music, we have a good time, and I read the other day a piece of music news, kind of historic, I think, but the Beastie Boys, right? Everyone knows the Beastie Boys.
Sure.
They are releasing a 5-part anthology covering their entire career. The entirety of it.
That's impressive. I mean, Beastie Boys are kind of rap legends, I guess. Music legends.
Rap rock or rock rap or we'll go with that. So I don't doubt that they have, the content necessary to fill a 5-part anthology. But my first question when I heard this was, what's the cost? What's the price? So I looked into it, and it turns out that parts A through D are free, but you got to fight for your right to part E. And that's this week's weekly dad joke.
Oh my goodness.
I've used that one far too many times in the wild. It has induced multiple eye rolls and cringes and because it seems like such a valid piece of information.
It's straight up fabulous. I mean, I guarantee there are listeners still laughing right now.
Oh yeah, for sure. In fact, I texted you that joke, I think a couple of weeks ago, and you're like, the first part, you're like, that's really interesting. It's just, it's so unassuming. It catches everybody off guard, and it is fan-freaking-tastic. So, with that, by the way, feel free to use that as always. I can tell you from experience, it is useful and it works. So, but listen, it so happens that Travis, you and I are branded right now.
I know. I noticed that.
Yeah, not even trying to coordinate that, but we have some PODcast merch on. He is wearing the Guns N' Roses inspired podcast professionals. I have the Cobra Kai inspired podcast t-shirt, and you can get both of these shirts and many other shirts over at printondemandcast.com/shop is where you can pick up all of your Print on Demand Cast merch, and it's the easiest way to support the show. That's for sure. Aside from listening and subscribing and leaving reviews, that kind of stuff. Monetarily speaking, Travis and I have told you, a lot of times, and if you're new to the show, this is something that Travis and I do for fun. It's a passion project. It's a hobby. We don't necessarily make money off of this. So if you like the content, if it's useful, if you're a fan, the easiest way to support, order a shirt, and it is greatly appreciated. Everything that comes in will just be reinvested into new equipment and, just improving the production quality of the show. So yeah.
Cool.
100%. So
nice advertisement.
Yes. printondemandcast.com/shop. And we are going to go straight into this week's point of interest.
Point of interest.
Just a prerequisite for everyone listening. This really has nothing to do with the print-on-demand industry, but this is more a story more than anything, or a retelling of our last month of our every other day habits and what we've been doing for a month. But to know that, first, you got to watch and listen to this.
Line over on that left wing for Palat. He's forced out, and it comes back in. And back is Steven Stamkos. Back in his own zone, chased by McCarr. The dynasty will be denied, and a new legacy begins. They've reached the summit, and the Avalanche are 2022 Stanley Cup champions.
Yes,
there you go, folks. The Avalanche are the 2022 Stanley Cup champions. And if you were wondering what we were doing when that happened, well, have another listen and a look.
Those poor animals.
Yeah, they're hating this.
And the dogs don't like it either.
Yeah, exactly. The dogs are also not fans of what was happening there. But for those of you listening, I encourage you, watch the YouTube version or, the Spotify version of the show to get the full understanding what just happened. Basically, that was Travis, myself, my father-in-law, Jason, who's been on the show before, his brother, Josh, our good friend, Graham, and then, of course, my mother-in-law was withholding or in trying to
wrestling the dogs down,
wrestling the hounds so that they weren't, unleashed and wreaking, or they didn't get killed. Really, we would have just stomped on them because they're so tiny. But all that to say, the Colorado Avalanche are this year's Stanley Cup champions, and I'll tell you what, for the last month, Travis, our lives have been consumed with playoff hockey.
Totally true. There was a couple of times when we were like, hey, we didn't have time to record. And, if we're going to be truthful and honest, the Colorado Avalanche did have something to do with that. We had to have our priorities straight. And, but no, we had a group of guys that would kind of rotate in and out. There was a few regulars, myself and Josiah included. We would go to these, we went to a few different bars. We kind of settled on one, to watch most of the playoffs. And, we missed a few games here and there, for various reasons, but Oh, we had so much fun running around, like just like you saw in that video.
Yeah.
We were high-fiving people we didn't know at this bar.
It was in public that we were doing this. And for whatever reason last night, my father-in-law, who is probably out of the entire group, the most avid of Avalanche fans.
Right.
And he was kind of the one that kind of spearheaded everyone going to the bar and watching the game, which we did last year, but it wasn't as fun because the Avs got out in like the second or third round. But he was just like, I think I kind of want to just watch this at my house. And so we all, the group of us went there, had some food, and I can't imagine the wild scene it would have been at Rock Solid. Sometimes you wish you could just have that remote control, and then click and just rewind and then just go and live the alternate reality of the Rock Solid celebration. But it's going to be interesting because I won't be back in that bar until May. Honestly, there's no reason for me to go back to Rock Solid ever, unless it's playoff hockey. And for those listening, it's the diviest bar probably that we could have found. But it was nice because, a tall pint of Coors Light was $3. If it's happy hour, it was $2. And so it was just super, super cheap alcohol, which is why we wanted to go. So,
and if you're going to go to that many games, I mean, we were talking about this actually last night after the game, about how long the playoff season actually is. And if you think about a regular hockey season, I think has like 45, 48 games, right? Wasn't that what it was?
It was, I think it was in the low 50s.
Low 50s, okay.
Something like that.
And you think about, you have to win 4 rounds of playoff hockey that could all go to 7 games. That's 28 games. That's half of a season potentially. Yeah. To play in addition to your full season if you actually go all the way to the cup. So all that to say is $2 and $3 beers are very important when you're watching all of those games.
No, that is accurate. And I this time last year, or a little before this time last year, Travis, you and I weren't really even hockey fans until we started watching playoff hockey last year, and now we were just enthralled and engrossed in every aspect of Colorado Avalanche hockey. So I will say it's one of the most intense, fast-paced, action-packed sports that are out there. Like, hockey players are legitimately some of the toughest guys in the world. It's like NHL is like probably the top, and at the bottom is probably NBA, I would say. But that's just my personal.
You're gonna get hate mail,
LeBron
but
James.
You know,
I know. I don't like him. So yeah, you can send your hate mail, I guess, this direction. Anyway, so with that being said, just a nice little story. It's nice that it's over. I'm glad we won. It was kind of weird because it's like, well, now what do we do with our lives? And I kind of enjoyed hanging out every other night, but it's time to resume normality in some sense. And so congratulations to the Colorado Avalanche. They are this year's Stanley Cup champions. And here's to a repeat next year. Absolutely. So with that being said, we're going to transition out of this and go straight to the main event.
Right on.
And there we go, folks. All right, so we're going to resume this POD 101 series that we started. It got interrupted 2 weeks ago because Uncle Mike was here, and so we had to chat with him and catch up and see what he was doing and understand the different dynamics happening at Make Your Mark Design. And then the week after that, playoff hockey happened. We already fessed up to that in the previous segment, so there's no shame in just telling you we didn't want to miss a game. So we're going to recap what we did now 3 weeks ago when we talked about design ideas, creating designs, design organizations, SKUs, design IDs, etc. All of that we covered last week. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to listen to that episode 3 weeks ago and kind of get caught up before moving to number 4, or listen to number 4 and go back and listen to number 3. Whatever you want to do, it's totally fine. It all makes sense either way. So, but we're going to move in this week. So we went from how to start a business, an LLC, what an EIN is, what a bank account is, all of that kind of stuff. Moving to all the way to, design creation, and then also VAs, finding someone to help you work in your business and kind of outsourcing a lot of that. So now, let's say you have all of that done, you have designs created, you have the organization, you have that down. Now you have to figure out, what do you want in a production partner? Who do you want to be your drop ship? Who do you want to actually produce the goods? If you're not going to bring it in-house, what are you going to do and how are you going to decide who gets the prestigious honor of being your drop shipper?
Right. And I mean, you just said we're not really going to talk about it because it could be a whole episode, but this is all assuming you're not going to bring it in. I mean, in-house.
Sure.
So we were already selling on Amazon. And if you've listened to the podcast for very long, you know my story. We just started sublimating coffee mugs in our basement and creating Amazon listings for them. Yeah. And that's how we got started. And we were fulfilling all of our own orders, going to the post office every day back in the day, and making the drop-offs and just basically just getting out all that product every day. Yeah. So that's one way you can start. I mean, you could, find a DTG machine online like Uncle Mike did. He found some DTG printers and he figured out how to fix them because he's a tinkerer and he likes to, tinker with things. And that's one way to do it. Or you could start with coffee mugs. You could start with, there's a lot of different things. There's a lot of people that are doing like Etsy and they're using like a Glowforge, which is an inexpensive or a kind of a consumer grade laser machine. And so they can do some laser things with that. And I mean, it's not going to hold a candle to a production style one, but you can still get started with something like that. What I started with coffee mugs is nowhere near what we have now. Like the presses that I was using back there were garbage. The printer that I was using back there was just a converted inkjet printer, and it was messy and it was garbage. So, but it got me started. It got me into the game. So we didn't have that on our notes, Josiah, but I did want to kind of throw that out as like, that's another possible, you could be your own production partner, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe we should add that as a 4.1 or 5 or something. Just talking about if you want to bring production in house, because I know predominantly there's the majority of our listenership demographic are people who aren't necessarily doing production themselves, but all of that to say, it probably, if useful to hear that information, if you're considering it, maybe you'll cross that bridge. You can come back as a reference, or there's someone out there listening now that, we don't want to take for granted that they're maybe making that journey themselves and considering what that process might look like. So maybe we will add that into this series. But the question you have to kind of ask yourself and answer is, what do you want out of a production partner? What's the thing that you're looking to gain? So here we're looking at speed, quality, and low cost, right? As you can see from the diagram, to have all three of those things, by the way, nothing like a good Venn diagram.
Nothing like it.
There's 3 different things, 3 different categories: speed, cost, quality. You can see in the middle, it says the word impossible. And that is because it is nearly impossible to find someone that can check all 3 of those boxes consistently all of the time. It's going to have to be a pick 2. Do you want something that's speed, fast, and quality? It's going to be expensive. Do you want something that's cost effective but quality? It's going to be slow. You want speed and cost? It's not going to be a good quality. So you have to pick 2 and take what you get when those 2 things combine, right? You have to deal with the product or the byproduct of picking those 2 particular circles in the Venn diagram.
Yeah, and I'll also say, obviously, speed, cost, and quality, it's all kind of, it's in the eye of the beholder. Like, what is speed to me may not be speed to you. What is quality to me may not be quality, so you have to kind of, so I guess that I say that because to say that speed, cost, and quality, getting all three of those things together is impossible is probably not 100% true, because our opinions on those three things vary so much. And so, so I might be fine with something that's, they get it fast and it's cost effective and it's not the greatest quality, but it's good enough for me. And so it's quality enough for me, but for your business, maybe it's not. So, but it really is.
There's a lot of subjective.
Yeah,
there's not,
totally.
I think a good example that I could probably point to, and I've told the story of this particular client multiple times, but he was a very, very high volume client, and he wanted all three of these at the same time. But getting into his definitions of what that meant, he wanted next level umbrella canvas shirts that were delivered to his customer's door within 2 days of their order at the cheapest possible price point in order to make maximum profit, which is understandable. But then it was a lot of managing expectations of like, hey, dude, 2 days, unless there's a Prime badge on that listing of yours, I don't think it's going to get there in 2 days. So in that instance, because of his definitions and his expectations that he brought to those three circles, it was actually really impossible to meet his exact expectation. But we've talked a lot about managing expectations. So in this show, so just understand that when you're picking a production partner and having those discussions, they might have to kind of temper your expectations, or you might have to temper your expectations and kind of adjust your definition of what that means, like Travis was saying, because it's so subjective. It's eye of the beholder stuff. So
yeah,
from there, Travis, what would you say would be next as far as the next kind of checklist or item when you're thinking about a production partner?
I think you could probably take either of the next two, kind of either way you want to go, but we could talk about customer service because there are going to be issues. There are going to be, returns. There's going to be problems because we live on the planet Earth. And so, and because people have, sometimes customers have unrealistic expectations and perhaps perhaps it's not being able to be conveyed to them. That's one reason. I'll just sidestep here for a second and say that's one reason why customer education is so important. So if you are selling on a platform, it's very important that your listings really give a realistic expectation of what your customers can expect in delivery time. And that's kind of what going back even further, what you were just saying about that one customer, you were doing customer education. And to get the order, to get the garment, to get it printed, to get it packed, and to get it to your customer in 2 days is not realistic. And here's why. And let me explain this to you. Let me educate you on the process that we have to go through. And so that's one example of customer education. But in our drop shipping mentality, customer education can be done through a listing, through a description, through some bullet points, and that's super important. But things are still going to even if you have all that perfect, it's still going to come up.
There's still going to be some issues.
And so if you're going to have to deal with that, if the customers are coming back to you, but you're still going to have to go to the drop shipper or the production partner, you're going to need to know what their response time is. Is it email or phone support or text support or chat support, or how do they handle that stuff? And are you comfortable with that method of communication? And then what do they actually do? What do they actually cover in terms of returns? So if it's printed wrong, is that your fault or is it their fault? If it breaks, is it your fault? Is it their fault? And you just need to understand all of those things. And most companies are pretty good about, like, so for instance, our company, if it's my fault, if a mug breaks in transit, I'm going to replace it because we didn't pack it good enough. Now, if if you submitted the wrong art file and we printed, that order that matched that SKU and it's all good and that's what you uploaded, well, I couldn't help that. I'll sure send a replacement, but I'm not going to pay for the first one. Yeah, sure. I mean, you're going to need to pay for that. So
pay for both.
Yeah. And that's something that if you were going to use us, you'd need to know that, hey, right. Basically we own our stuff and we hope that our customers are okay owning their stuff. And we try to be fair. And I think a lot of companies are like that, but those are some of the things that you need to think through, particularly like the communication aspect, I think. Yeah. Are you cool sending an email or do you want to talk to somebody?
Sure. How hard is it to get in touch with a human? You know what I mean? I think it's something that you and I, have dealt with recently in terms of there was a social media management software where you could kind of manage all things at once, right? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, one post there to all those platforms, and so we had signed up for a trial period and decided not to use it, but we didn't cancel the free trial in time and got charged. And so I was out on a mission to try and get that money back. And the process of trying to talk to a human on the phone was very difficult. There was some instant chat that was happening. The response time was a little laggy as far as when they would actually get back to you. And then you go to their website and there was no phone number. There was social media channels that you were encouraged to DM. And so I finally DM'd them through Twitter and said, hey, here's the scenario. I'm not getting any response from your website chat box. I need to know if this is something that can be remedied because we clearly don't want to spend X amount of money on a product that we're not using.
Right.
And so they responded to me instantly on Twitter, but then said, well, you've already filed the ticket with our chat, blah, blah, blah. You're going to have to wait and hear back from them. So all of that to say, end of the story, it's all resolved, happy ending stuff. Yes. But the simplicity of being able to find a phone number and just call somebody and talk to them in a medium that's not, text or that can't be misunderstood or lost in translation, or because I'll tell you, if it's a complex situation, I have to really muster the focus to type it out in a way that is succinct and detailed enough to both be quick for me and provide enough detail for the person that I'm trying to get an answer from. Whereas on a phone, you can do that in 10 minutes because it's much easier to speak. So it's important to know, are you going to be able to actually reach somebody? Or are you going to have to submit tickets and wait for an email? And if that's the case, that's great. But try and get an understanding of what that lead time is, because while you're waiting on your supplier, your customer is waiting on you. And so you're beholden to the supplier's efficiency, and the customer doesn't know that Printful or Printify or whoever is fulfilling your orders. They only know you. And so they don't care. I can tell you that as a former Verizon salesman, people don't give a rip about what you're beholden to. You're the face they're talking to, and you're the person that they're going to want to vent their frustrations to.
Totally.
So you have to get a good understanding of the back end process and how long it's going to take you to get an answer. And are you okay with that? Is it 14 days? Will they respond within 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, 7 days? God forbid it's a week before they get back to you, but it's a big company. There's lots of moving pieces. Most of the time, left hand doesn't know what the right's doing. You might not get connected to the same person every time. So you really have to understand those logistics when you decide that, because inevitably it's going to reflect on your business and not theirs.
Right. And, let's just be frank. Customer support is a really big part of these companies' expenses, and it doesn't bring in any revenue. And so it's going to make sense that they're going to try to make it as least expensive as they can by potentially eliminating some channels that you could contact them in. Phone support's probably the most expensive for them to be able to support. And so they try to direct people to the social media channels, to the email, because they can queue that a lot easier than live person on the phone. Of course, you've all been in a queue for a phone call, but you get the idea. I can have several hundred emails in a queue and, dispersed amongst people. But I don't know if I've never called somebody, a place and been like, you are number 428. Please hold, That's never happened.
Your wait time is 14 hours.
Yeah. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're working with larger companies. They have to figure that out for themselves, and they do so in different ways.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess that's customer service. Do you have anything else to say about like how to vet that?
No, I think we covered a lot of it. I will say, going back to just that education process, educating yourself, and in the instance of that customer I was talking about, explaining to him the reason why 2 days wasn't realistic. I then encouraged him to educate his customers and manage their expectations so that they understand when they purchase these guidelines that were set in place by us. But again, it's his customer. So the education process is, rolls downhill. If whatever you hear from your supplier, whatever details you learn from them, lead time, expectations, what's covered, all of that, you need to then in turn educate your customer. Because if you tell your customer something different, knowing that it's not actually how it is, you're just a bad business person at that point. Like, I don't know how else to say that. Yeah. But yeah, so I would say that's probably, customer service, customer support in a nutshell. Next, I would say, what about samples, quality check, QC? The best way to kind of quality check is to see if you can get samples. And Travis, there's a couple of reasons why that's beneficial, right? What would you say like one of the first reasons wanting to get samples would be beneficial for yourself?
Yeah, it really goes back to that Venn diagram that we were showing earlier, because by ordering samples from this company, you're going to be able to see how much they charge. So that's the cost. You're going to see how fast they actually get it to you. So you're going to see the speed, and you're going to actually hold the product in your hand. So you're going to get to see the quality, and you're going to be able to be the master of your own destiny when it comes to the Venn diagram of speed, cost, and quality through just actually using the service. So you get to also see like, well, what is it like putting in an order at this company or at this, on this website or with whoever? How is that? Is it all email based? Is it, is there a user interface? Can I drag and drop my art? What are the requirements for art? There's a lot of things you get kind of when you actually take the time to get a sample, to actually place an order from these companies. So I would highly, highly recommend it. The one thing I will say though, when we're talking about that Venn diagram, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, but if you're just selling like on Amazon or Etsy, quality is important, but it might not be quite as important as if you have a specific brand that only, like your brand is Comfort Colors, and you have like 5 designs and you sell the crap ton out of those, obviously you're not going to, swap that Comfort Colors out with a Gildan, because, that would totally separate yourself from the brand, or separate that product from the brand. And it just doesn't work. But if you're just like selling novelty tees, funny tees, like these tees, on an Amazon or an Etsy, you don't have to sell it on an as color, if you don't want to. You don't have to sell it on the most expensive shirt. You can, and that's totally fine. And you can pay that extra if you feel like your customers will pay that extra. But that's just kind of an aside when you're talking about quality. So when you get it in your hands and you're actually feeling it, you might actually be surprised that, this Gildan soft style that I'm wearing is going to feel a heck of a lot like a Bella Canvas 3001 or Next Level 3600.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Samples are huge for that reason. And another reason that samples are a good idea is, let's say that you are, if you have a brand or you're selling to a following, or you are an influencer, or you're building a site to sell merch, getting those things in hand, like Travis said, allows you to intelligently speak about the quality and the process, but it also gives you a chance to wear the stuff in the video that you're posting, or totally take actual lifestyle shots of your friend modeling it for you and throwing those out, as opposed to just the system generated stuff that is there, but it's not quite as engaging. And so that from an advertising and marketing standpoint, samples are incredibly advantageous because in my experience, we've talked about working with influencers with print on demand. And in my experience, if you get the merch that the influencer is trying to sell in the hands of the influencer for them to wear in videos, it makes a world of difference. So that's another reason that samples are a very, very good idea. Apart from just wanting to know the quality and the turnaround times, it's just being able to speak to your followers, to your demographic intelligently, and market it in a way that's better than just system generated thumbnails, basically. Right.
Yeah, that's an excellent point that we didn't have in our show notes. So kudos to you, Mr. Josiah.
Thinking outside the box. Let's say we'll go, the big three and these suppliers would be Printify, Printful, and Guten, which Guten is always fun to say. Guten. Those are probably the big three that are available out there. They've got a lot of integrations. They've got a lot of products that they can decorate and make for you. If you want to know more about those particular channels individually and what they actually offer respectively, you can go to episode 32 in the archives, and we kind of did more of a detailed dive on everything that those particular platforms offer and the integrations that they offer and they don't offer. If you are interested in any three of those, you can certainly go back in the archives and avail yourself of that episode and the information therein. But, Travis, I would say there is certainly another option.
Well, before we get to that other option, I do want to point out, first of all, thank you for that beautiful segue that I just stole back from you.
Walked all over.
Yeah, I know. Well, you know me, I've got to talk a lot, I just wanted to mention that, that first of all, the three, calling them the big three, you could definitely argue that. I would think that Printful and Printify are probably the big two. And then there's probably a lot of people that would wrestle for
rotating third
for three. But episode 32, we talked about those three. So for us, those are the big three. The other thing I'll mention is if you didn't know this, Printify is actually a marketplace for printers. So I could belong to Printify and actually you could, if you went to their thing. Yeah. So it's not, it can be a low cost opportunity for you. But the issue can be, if one supplier is out of a certain color, certain size, Printify may auto shift your order to another supplier, and their printers are garbage maybe. And it's not something that you've sampled. And so you're immediately getting, they're basically solving that problem for you, which is great. But at the same time, you're not 100% sure what kind of quality you're going to get from printer number 2 or printer B, because you're set up with printer A and you've sampled them and you really like them and they're doing great for you. But so that's something. And then if you have multiple products coming from different suppliers, hey, we do coffee mugs. Well, company A does coffee mugs. We do t-shirts. Company B does t-shirts. Somebody orders a t-shirt and a mug. It's coming from 2 different places. Is that good or bad? I don't know. It's just something to be aware of. So, because your customer is going to be like, hey, I got the mug and there was no shirt in here, or vice versa, and you have to be able to understand, oh, okay, well, it's still coming. Here's the tracking for that, and having that information will be important for you versus Printful and Guten. And there's a whole lot others, but they actually produce their stuff in-house. Now you can still use a combination of Printful and Guten and Printify, knowing full well that if people order multiple things, they're all going to come from different places and you got to keep track of all that. But I think it's always nice to kind of, if you can, try to limit your supplier to one place that does a lot of things, which brings us to your segue, doesn't it?
Oh, yes, it does. I was just thinking when talking about big threes that we could maybe, we had, for those listening, we had a lot of conversations about Mount Rushmore last night after the win at the Stanley Cup, and the Mount Rushmore of Colorado sports figures and all these different like prerequisite qualifications that would qualify the different versions of Mount. So as he's talking about this, all I'm thinking is like, he's doing Mount Rushmore of like print on demand suppliers, but who knows? It could be fun theme of bonus episodes. It's just Mount Rushmore episodes on various topics. So yeah, but all of that to say, there is another option, Travis. I'm going to tee up this transition one more time and swing away.
I'm not going to torpedo it this time, I promise. So yeah, obviously you guys probably know Make Your Mark Design is our company. We do fulfillment and we integrate with, Etsy and Amazon and Shopify and Walmart and
Squarespace.
Squarespace, all kinds of different places. And we do order fulfillment. And so, it's not as shiny and flashy as some of these other big companies that you really have access to a lot of technology to make a really nice user interface or whatnot. But we are able to, through the use of like spreadsheets and things like that, which aren't very sexy, but they get the job done. We can integrate with those channels and we can integrate with your inventory and produce those products for you. We can also, through Deco Network, which we've talked about here on the show, we can create online stores for you and fulfill, whatever you need. If your customer doesn't have a store and they want to just sell some stuff, maybe they have a WordPress site, but they don't know how to, do the right plugins to make an actual e-commerce site. Well, we can just like literally come right beside that and help you create something that's somewhat branded for, your customer or for you.
Sure.
And then you have access to all of our catalog of goods that you can put your stuff on, your logo, your designs or whatever. And then of course, in those situations, you're responsible for the marketing, but in a lot of instances, these are used by influencers or people who, have audiences and they're like Josiah was saying, they're wearing the t-shirt. They come out in the TikTok, they do the dance, they do the whatever. And then they say, check out my t-shirt, go to this link. And that points back to us. We fulfill it and give a commission on what you've made beyond what we charge for those things at the end of the month.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other good thing about working with Make Your Mark Design is there is a phone number and you guys already know the people you'll talk to. So you've heard all of them on this show at one point or another, whether it's Uncle Mike or Tate, myself or Travis or whoever. You know who you're working with. You know that you have a direct line of access. You know that if there is an issue, it can be resolved expediently instead of sending an email off into the ether and hoping that someone gets back to you within 24 business days. The turnaround time as far as customer support is a lot better when you're working with a smaller company, which is one advantage. Like really, it's the advantage that I think can set a local mom and pop shop apart from some of the big guys. Whereas, maybe you don't offer quite as many products, you're not as cheap. People will go with you and make the decision to work with you if you are better and more attentive and you're there and they feel like they have a person that they know they can talk to, that there's established rapport and trust. So that definitely kind of sets over, or the thing that can push over mom and pop shop, smaller places like Make Your Mark Design over the top.
I was just gonna say, I was listening to a podcast. You know who Guy Raz is? Does How I Built This and Wisdom from the Top. And I was listening to a podcast today with him talking with the CEO of Sprint. And one of the things they got really not super in the weeds, but one of the things that they dug into a little bit was just talking about how much customer service costs a company. And so any way that you can, shorten the amount of time that you have kind of in the queue or figuring something out or having to deal with that customer or their issue, that saves money over time. So it may pay for, not having that one product or paying a little bit more for product B versus product A. Again, it's almost like we need to get that Venn diagram out and add customer service, as one of those big circles. But, maybe it's part of quality, or something like that. But it's definitely something that you should consider regardless of which provider you choose.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're at the end of this episode, unless you have anything else you want to add or you want to ask about. I guess I could tell you how you can connect with us. If you do want us to work with you, if you want to know more about the process, you can email info@makeyourmark.design. You go to makeyourmark.design, the website, and there's a little form there on the left-hand side. When you get there, you can say, I have an e-commerce store or I want an e-commerce store. You can click one of those two buttons. It will lead you to, some more information. You can fill out a form and get back to us. Or you can info@printondemandcast.com. There's tons of ways to get in touch with Make Your Mark Design directly if you are wanting to use us to fulfill your product, which of course I can tell you it's a really cool experience talking to listeners as we have in the past of like, hey, we heard on the podcast, this is what you guys are doing. We want to work with you. And there's already an established connection because we talk so much and so frequently for 97 episodes that people feel like they know us, which then in many respects they do. I mean, there's been a lot of stuff that's happened and changed over 97 episodes. So, but it's always fun to connect with you guys, especially in the context of you wanting us to help your business succeed. So,
yeah, I mean, not least of the changes is my hair length.
It's true. I think episode 100, we'll just do like a comparison shot of early episode Travis and long hair episode 100 Travis. So I think it could work. Anything else before we wrap this thing up?
I don't think so. I think we're good to wrap.
All right. Well,
like the Beastie Boys.
That's right. Parts A through D are free. If you guys want to, leave us a review, your favorite dad joke, I don't know, feel free to do that. You can get to us to review us on Apple Podcasts. You can leave a review, 5 stars, of course, leave a comment. You can review us on Spotify as well, and let us know what you think of the show. I know that we say that it, makes us feel good, which it does, but on the logistic, practical sense, it just helps the algorithm tell the system that more people need this information. So share the show, share the YouTube videos, share the page. And if you know people that need this information or maybe wanting to dabble into POD and what it's all about, let us know, let them know, and send them the show. You can reach out to us on social media. Of course, printondemandcast.com/Facebook is where you can join the Facebook group. Some people have been submitting dad jokes recently, and I think that's hilarious. And a lot of people, some good memes happening that are dad joke centered. So I think that would be really, really good to see more of as well, because it's always entertaining. Some levity is always much, much needed. But if you have questions for us about this episode, if you have questions for Uncle Mike or anybody, let us know. Then that's one way you can do it is through the Facebook group. If you don't have Facebook, you hate Facebook. I get it. I understand. You can email us at the aforementioned email address. info@printondemandcast.com is how you can get in contact with us outside of social media. Otherwise, if you want to see more content, we have printondemandcast.com/YouTube and printondemandcast.com/Instagram is where you can go and follow us on the other platforms as well. So thank you guys so much for your patience, for bearing with us during hockey playoff season. Now that there's a precedent. So next year at this time, if things are a little hit and miss, why.
Too bad. Frankly, too bad.
Watch the game. That's all I'm going to say.
Yes.
Just watch the game, cheer for the Avs. I don't care where you're from. And by the way, if we have any Tampa fans, sorry, not sorry. Go Avs, go. So when we release this, I can just watch the statistics and watch our Florida listenership just plummet like their playoff chances last night. So with all that being said, thank you guys so much for listening. For Travis, I'm Josiah. We'll see you next week right here on the Print on Demand Cast.
See ya.
Hey, babe. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Print on Demand Cast. We hope you enjoyed the Totally Tubular Show. If you've got a question or a suggestion for the show, send Travis and Josiah an email at info@printondemandcast.com. Want to be wicked nice? Take a minute to rate and review the show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe now so you don't miss next week's episode. See you next time, for sure.